Welcome back to Morning Joe. It is Tuesday, April 9th. Happy birthday, Joe.
Thank you, Mika.
Still with Joe, Willie, and me, we have national affairs analyst for NBC News and MSNBC, John Heilman, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist and associate editor of The Washington Post and MSNBC political analyst Eugene Robinson. And joining the conversation, senior writer at Politico and MSNBC political contributor Jake Sherman and Politico senior Washington correspondent Anna Palmer. They are co-authors of the Politico Playbook and co-authors of the brand new book, The Hill to Die On, The Battle for Congress and the Future of Trump's America.
Congratulations on the book, Jake and Anna. It's great to have you on here. Jake, first of all, tell us about the battle on the Hill, and specifically tied to what's going on today. Obviously, not a lot of people on Capitol Hill happy with the fact that DHS is now gutted.
One thing that keeps coming to mind that we reported in our book is, and again, we sat down with people for 27 months or 26 months to talk in real time about Donald Trump and legislating. And one thing that sticks out in my mind is something that Donald Trump told us right after the election, which does play into what's happening today. He told us in an interview that he wasn't so upset, or he indicated he wasn't so upset that Republicans lost the House, because he figured he could work with Democrats. He could say to Democrats, well, just bring me legislation. If I like it, I'll sign it. And Republicans, he thought, were too picky over what they wanted to do with legislation, which if you look in today's framework, and this is just a small part of our book, but in thinking about what's happening now, if you look in today's framework, that's quite stunning, as the president's under a barrage of investigations, is unable to get practically anything, or will be unable to get anything through Congress over the next couple of years. Quite stunning when you think about it in that context.
Well, moving forward, Anna, I mean, the president is so distracted by all these investigations and his own sort of desire to talk about things that have nothing to do with running the government. But in terms of DHS and all these gaping holes across the board, quite frankly, a lot of acting secretaries and acting commissioners and acting heads of departments instead of permanent people. Isn't there concern moving forward on Capitol Hill about whether or not this impacts national security in a real, intangible way?
I think there is a concern. I think what we found in talking to a lot of members, sitting down with them for multiple times a month, is privately they were very concerned about how Donald Trump was leading the country. You saw that with Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell, kind of trying to make sure that they were steering the ship as best as they could. And what you've seen this week, I think, particularly with senators like Chuck Grassley and Senator John Cornyn, two senators that rarely speak out against the president and what he's doing, they've come out pretty forcefully in a way that I don't think can be overstated.
So, Jake, this fits into the larger questions you guys talk about in your book, that you write about in the book, which is how Republicans handle this president, how they've handled him now for 2.5 years, actually longer, going back to the campaign when the Access Hollywood tape comes out. Some of them condemn him, and then they step back from it, and they get back on the train with him. You guys know better than anybody. A tweet comes out in the morning. Reporters rush to Paul Ryan or whoever it is and ask to respond to the tweet, and they kind of roll their eyes and go, I'm not going to respond to everything the president tweets or says or does. Are you surprised, though, that there hasn't been more criticism of the president from some Republicans where it's appropriate? And if not, why?
Well, I'll take that in two pieces. Number one, Ryan's a main character of this book, and we kind of trace his I don't know how to say it, but transition from a big Trump critic during the 2016 campaign to somebody facilitating his agenda to somebody that Donald Trump told us he called him Foxhole Paul because he didn't stick in the foxhole with him. But I think the reality that members of Congress face now is that most of their districts, and especially in the House, are Donald Trump districts. I mean, that's what Congress looks like at this point. The Congress is so polarized that you really lose by not being with the president. But on an issue like this, this is just chaos. And Chuck Grassley has former members of his staff in the administration who he's desperately trying to save. So they have their own kind of personal and parochial interest at play here, too. Am I surprised? The answer, in short, is no. I mean, he's an overpowering figure, and there isn't much plus in many cases to getting on his bad side.
Yeah, I mean, if and look at somebody like Lindsey Graham, you go, why is Lindsey Graham behaving the way he is? Well, he's getting a primary challenge, or the announcement that there could be a primary challenge in his race in a state where Donald Trump is very popular. Do you hear privately what I often hear privately? People criticizing the president and, again, rolling their eyes and being a little exasperated at the level and the amount and the consistency of what comes out of his mouth, but then publicly saying something different?
Yeah, I do think that we've shifted a little bit in the last couple of weeks, whether it was on healthcare or now in DHS. You have Republicans who are looking at 2020. You have a Cory Gardner in Colorado. Those are senators who are going to be in tight races that are trying to figure out how to thread the needle of how to be with the president when it's advantageous to them, but how do they push back on some of these issues that not only politically, but also really philosophically, they differ with where Trump is.
So yeah, let me just stay with this for a second, right? Talk about McConnell a little bit, right? Who's you guys another big figure in your book?
Yes.
What's McConnell? If you think about the 2 years, right? Any rational person over the first 2 years would have said to Donald Trump, you know what? Keeping control of both houses of Congress is the most important thing for you.
Right.
Like the world will change dramatically if one or both houses of Congress are controlled by Democrats, and yet instead Trump constantly did things that made life more difficult for House Republicans and for Senate Republicans in vulnerable seats. Now there's a lot of Senate Republicans in vulnerable seats headed into 2020. What has McConnell taken away from the experience of 2 years dealing with Trump's political judgment and his selfishness as a president?
Goodness, that's a loaded question. So I think McConnell more than anybody else, and there's a big debate kind of on Capitol Hill privately among Republicans about why Paul Ryan always got walloped for disagreeing with Donald Trump, and Mitch McConnell was able to disagree with Donald Trump with basically no political consequence on the downside. Mitch McConnell frequently says, yeah, I don't agree with the president on that. He's not going to do that, and I'm going to make sure he doesn't do that. So Mitch McConnell has been able to put a lot more distance between himself and the president at times, although a lot of people think there should be a lot more. Now, McConnell's chief objective, I think you could say more than anything, is winning. I mean, he tells us in the book after the Kavanaugh episode, his one takeaway was that he was a rock star for being able to get him through because his poll numbers went through the roof. So if you look at this election, his chief priority is going to be getting Republican senators elected, period, the end. And however he has to deal with Donald Trump to do that, he will do it, and he will do it with almost no hesitation on any front. That's kind of my experience having observed him and watched him for all these years and talked to him over the last 2.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.